Memorial Day. It came up on me, and it was one of those things that if I thought about it otherwise, I might have canceled today, but I want to kind of keep the momentum going on the marketing chats. So I'm glad to see people introducing themselves. Very important. I'm going to call out Lauren Plotkin. Lauren, make sure that you repost your introduction and use the drop down that says all panelists and attendees, and so that everybody can see you. And so for those of you who have never been on one of these calls, we use the chat as kind of the networking area and sharing resources amongst all attendees. We use Q&A to ask questions of me or the panelists, and or bring up topics that you definitely want everybody to hear. And then the other way that you can communicate with everyone is to raise your hand, and we'll bring you on so you can share your resources, questions, and comments. Okay, so let's, and it's great to see everybody coming into the room. Jana, Marquita, I'm gonna pick on Marquita with Insight Memory Care. Marquita, make sure that you repost your introduction and use the drop down that says all panelists and attendees. Looks like everybody else is posting. Okay, I think we've got, it's one of the benefits of having many of you back week after week, is we're finally figuring all this stuff out. Kathleen from Waltonwood, make sure that you repost and use the drop down that says all panelists and attendees. Andy Casito with Tyson's Wood, same thing, repost your introduction. And great to see all you guys coming into the room. This is great. Okay, so let's get started. And first off, the other thing is today, last week I had Tom Najjar, who was on, and he shared some of his resources on outreach to referral sources. This week, I'm really counting on you guys on this topic, is that I really hope that some of you will raise your hand to share your resources that you have, experiences that you have related to communicating on email and email marketing. Okay, I'm going to kind of go over, I'm going to dive deeper than we did on the digital marketing talk that we had a few weeks ago, and try to get in the weeds a little bit more. But throughout the presentation today, if you have something that you want to share, either throw it into chat, throw it into Q&A, or raise your hand, and I will do my best to call on you. Okay, so let's get into this here. Okay, so first off, those of you who've been on these calls know that I love using the bucket analogy, and this is just one that I always get us started with. Those people who are on the call today, we generally fall into one or more of these three buckets: senior housing or housing in general, aging in place solutions, home care, universal design, transportation, villages, and resources, aging life care, elder law, what have you. So those are the three buckets that we all kind of fall into. The next three buckets that are super important, and I'm going to beat this drum until you guys are completely sick of it, is knowing who your clients are. And if you weren't on last week's webinar, you can go back and look at the recordings. I'll send you links as a follow-up, but this is what we dug into a little bit deeper. And it's one of the reasons that I wanted to focus on email today, because when we are emailing, when we are communicating with our clients, our referral sources, and the people we refer to via email, we're actually gathering data, and we are learning more about their behaviors, what they want. And it's, in addition to a communication tool with email, it's also great market research as well. So these are the three buckets. the more you know about who your clients are, what their problems are, what solutions you're offering, what clubs they belong to, what's their profession, what geographic area they live in or come from, the more you're going to be able to target your messaging and to be more effective and to save money. The more you know about your clients, the less you're sort of buying broad-based marketing tools you can hone in. And the same goes with your referral sources and who you refer to. Okay, so then the next sort of reminder slide for those of you who have been on these calls is the new marketing funnel. And don't worry, for those of you, I will send you a link to this PowerPoint if you want to refer to it later. But this is really important. This is especially important if you're doing any kind of digital marketing. It's a broad-based and detailed marketing funnel that, you know, if we break it into 3 larger components, we have lead generation. Those are people that we've never met before that might be interested in what we have to offer, and we're bringing them into our communication circle. We've got our lead nurture. Those are people that have basically, they're in our circle, but we're working with them to help them figure out if they want to become a customer, resident, member, what have you. We're building that trust between them. And lastly, those people that have converted from the lead to a customer, member, resident, it's how we communicate with them. And so we'll refer to this, and it's very important because depending on where the person you're communicating is with in this funnel, it is, you want the message to be customized to them, and we will be talking about that a lot today. Okay, so here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to try to focus primarily on communicating with other people. It could be our coworkers, it could be our customers, it could be our prospects, it could be our current residents, it could be our referral sources, it could be vendors, what have you. We're going to sort of dive in to the dynamics and some of the tools available to be as effective as possible using email. The first bucket that I have here are your personal emails, and that's what we're going to dive into first. And what I mean by your personal emails, it's just simply you open up your Outlook or Gmail account, somebody sends you an email, and you reply back. What are some tools that we can use to maximize this type of communication, which is the most personal and probably the most important? The second bucket is broader based email marketing. This may be the type of email communication that you use using a system like MailChimp, Constant Contact, or your CRM system, where you might be sending out 1,000 emails to everybody on your prospect list and communicating with them that way. Or if you are, you know, a group like a Aging in Place Village or a retirement community, you may have a monthly newsletter that you send out. What are some of the techniques and tools that we can use to be most effective and to measure the process? And as you can see here are some of the elements that I'll be talking about today, okay? So let's see. And actually, I'm gonna, before I get into my first slide, which is your personal email, I just want to take a peek at the chat and remind everybody, okay, I'm going to call out a few folks that posted only to panelists, so I'm the only one that sees it, and not to all attendees. Andy Casito from Tyson's Woods, repost your message there. It only went to panelists. You got to use the drop down that says all panelists and attendees. Let's see, Allegra, repost yours. You're from Let's Connect Life. Make sure that you repost that so that all attendees see your message. Looks like Jennifer Brown corrected herself there. Sue Dalton from Goodwin House. Make sure you repost your introduction so that all panelists and attendees see it. And Abby Sternberg, you know, from Legacy Recording Now, make sure you repost so that everybody gets to see your contact info. Kitty Janney from Kensington, repost so that you're selecting all attendees. Patricia Dubrow, all panelists, repost. Sorry to kind of break it up with that housekeeping there, but I know the chat this is our business card exchange, and we've got over 100 people on this session today, and I want to make sure that you all get to meet each other. And then we share that chat with you. So this is a great sort of business card exchange and one of the benefits of coming on these webinars. Okay, I'm going to dive into this. If you guys have any comments or you want to share any of your insights on any of these topics, either raise your hand or type it into Q&A, not chat. It's hard for me to read all the chat that's there, okay? So first, we're going to talk about your personal emails. Like I said, this is the email that you received today from one person to another, or maybe a handful of people. But the important distinction is this is in your email server, Gmail, Outlook, Yahoo, whatever you use. This is that personal email. So I'm going to give you a few little items to think about. The first is your signature. The signature at the bottom of your email. Your signature is an unbelievable marketing tool, especially amongst referral sources. And so you should do everything you can to optimize and to enhance your branding. So here are a couple of tips. First, a simple design that is consistent with the branding of your organization is very important. So there are some tools out there. If you just type into Google, let's say email signature generator, there are some real, if you feel like you're not a great graphic designer or what have you, there's some tools out there that can sort of help you set up a signature very similar to the one that I have on the screen for Patricia, where you just plug in your email and your phone number and all that stuff, your Facebook page, and it can create a neat little graphically appealing signature, and which shows you as a professional. Now, some of the things to think about is you may or may not want to have a photo on there. You may or may not want to have a logo. There's no rule of thumb, but the key is to be consistent with your branding. Now, here's a couple of little pet peeves that I've sort of seen over the years, is where you might have one company with 5 or 6 community service reps that are out there, but each of their email signatures looks different. It's almost as though they're representing 5 different companies. One thing that is also a great team building activity is to maybe internally, if you have a staff, is to say, hey, let's have a contest, or let's figure out what our email signature is going to look like, and let's make sure it's consistent across all of us. Because especially when we're dealing with referral sources, we want, and a referral source that might be touching base with 2 or 3 different people in an organization, we don't want there to be any confusion that they are communicating with the same company. And some of you all are out there who have companies, different companies that have similar names. So we want to make sure this branding is consistent as well. Another pet peeve that I've got is to make sure that your email signature, there are certain things that can be images, and there's certain things that should actually be typed, okay? So you want phone numbers, email addresses, websites to be actual type, not part of a JPEG image. And the reason being is that if somebody, let's say a referral source gets a call and they say, I'm looking for a universal design service, and that referral source is going through their phone and they're trying to find the last email communication that you had with them, you want them to be able to just cut and paste your email or cut and paste your phone number, as opposed to having a heavy JPEG image that is going to require them to either retype that information or for the person you're referring them to retype it. So be thinking about that. Also think about it. One thing that I'm a big fan of is having more than one signature. Most email systems will allow you to do this. So you could have one email signature for prospects and another email signature for referral sources. And you could have another email signature for coworkers. And it's as easy as just a drop down where you, when you're communicating with somebody, oh, I'm going to select this signature and use this one instead. And this enables you, and it's going to be something that we're going to hear throughout today. This enables you to be very focused and targeted in the communication to the person that you're communicating with. Having social media links is great because chances are somebody that you're emailing one-on-one, especially amongst our professional circles, really wants to like your Facebook page or to connect with you on LinkedIn. And so that's another element that you should include. You'll notice on the screen, I've got this realtor here has a little offer. It's download an ebook. Not a bad idea. It's a call to action. It's sort of like in that casual email communication, it may drive somebody to be more engaged with you by taking advantage of an offer like an ebook or something else. There's the other day I met a contact and they sent me an email using a system called BombBomb. And there are multiple systems like this, but what BombBomb does is it enables somebody to, instead of sending me a typewritten response, I opened up my email and I had a video response, and it was sort of like, hey, Steve, it was great to meet you today. I'm looking forward to X, Y, and Z. And it was just this very personal response utilizing video that was face-to-face. I don't necessarily, I'm not endorsing that type of response, but for the right type of communication, it can be phenomenal. Just imagine that you have somebody who calls, let's say you're an assisted living, and they call you and you have a phone conversation, and then you're able to follow up with this face-to-face video that's very customized to them. It's very short and quick, and it's sort of like, hey, Steve, thanks for calling Shady Acres about your mom. Just wanted to follow up, and attached to this document is our pricing, and you can click the link below and you can schedule an appointment to come out and see us. So, I think BombBomb seemed to be one of the leaders in that market. Might be something to play around with, and it's free, so you can give it a try. And the last bullet that I have on here is that a lot of times we're emailing back and forth with people, but we never add that email to our email list so that person can be communicated with on an ongoing basis. It's just sort of stuck in our Outlook or stuck in our Gmail, and making it a practice and making it easy to get those over to your bulk email list is important. A few things on sign-offs, which are, how you sort of close your engagement with someone, is just, industry practice breaks these down into 3 different categories: formal, casual, friendly, and appreciation. Based on every email study, it shows that the appreciation, where you're saying thanks or I appreciate this, gets a more direct action than the casual, friendly, and the formal responses. And obviously, this is not rocket science. There's a reason for that, because you're saying thanks, so you're asking somebody to do something. But it's if your goal is to engage and to continue engagement with the people you're emailing with, is you're thinking about calls to action. And so you're thinking about, you know, how am I going to thank them? One thing that I will find, that I've found, is that a lot of people will add that sign off automatically to their signature. So they're always, it's never customized to the communication that you're having. It's always the communication with them always ends in regards or thanks or have a blessed day. So just be thinking about customizing that sign off so that the person you're emailing with feels connected to you. And lastly, spell and grammar check. Listen, I am a notorious offender here. I try to run most of my communication by my editor. And unfortunately, sometimes I just don't have time to do that, to plan my communication. And so one tool that I've personally found to be very useful is Grammarly. It's an add-on feature that goes over and above spell check. And I believe they have a free version, but it's really good, and it actually trains you to be a better writer, and it catches lots of mistakes that I make. Doesn't catch them all, as you guys probably see. Okay, now we're going to move into the next section, which is focusing on our email marketing, the bigger picture. But before we do that, I'm going to call on Lauren. She's raising, whoops, Lauren, I thought you were raising your hand. Okay, I guess not. There she is. Lauren, hey. Lauren, did you want to make a comment? Lauren? Okay, might have been a mistake. Okay, just raise your hand if you'd like to say something, Lauren. That's Lauren with Old Dominion. And if anybody would like to add to the conversation, by all means, jump in. Okay, Daniel Sanders. Daniel is one of the users of
Steve, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm sorry, different computer setup, not sure what's working, what's not. So one of the tools that we added to our arsenal over the last couple of weeks, and it is fantastic, is something called BombBomb.
Oh yeah, I just brought that up. I'm glad you're a user of BombBomb. So tell us how you use it.
So I use it in a couple of different ways. I'm using it to do quick, less than 30-second, 35-second follow-up videos, and they go out by email. They get recorded in our existing CRM system, which is a system called Nutshell. It's an inexpensive, highly versatile, robust system. It was something we talked about the last session. And it embeds a video right into the email. In fact, I think I've sent you one or two as I was testing the system. And then the other way that we use it is for straight up prospecting. So I have lists of very strong performing realtors and movers and other people who are referral sources and estate planning attorneys that are referral sources for us. And so I'm able to send them personalized video messages to increase the engagement and the response rates, and it's working like a charm.
Yeah, I agree, Daniel. I think that BombBomb is great, and especially for that first engagement. Like if somebody called you on the phone and then you follow up with email, now they get to see exactly who they were talking to.
Exactly. I just did that. I got a referral from a realtor this morning to talk to a client about an estate sale project. We scheduled an appointment for this afternoon, and I sent them a response email to their initial inquiry with a video embedded. And I've already gotten a response back, extremely positive, you know, hey, that's fantastic. What a nice extra touch. So anyway,
great.
That's what I have.
Thanks a lot. And Daniel, before you get off, Bonnie Elliott is in the Q&A. She added, BombBomb is free only up to a point. I'm assuming you're using the paid version of it.
Yes, it's $39 a month after the first 14-day trial.
Yeah. And so,
And
you know, that's the cool thing with a lot of the platforms we're talking about, is that you can use something for a couple of weeks and you can figure out if it's going to be worth it to make the investment to go further.
yeah, one of the things though that BombBomb does offer, and I actually shied away from this. I tested it and I didn't like it. Is they have, most of the CRM systems have integrations available, and so there's an integration to so that you can send information both ways to both your CRM system and have it mirror in your BombBomb contact list. Not a fan. Didn't want to pay for the integration. I didn't think it added anything to build yet another database with exactly the same information. So
Yeah.
do look at those integrations carefully before you race down that path, because they can end up costing you a lot of money over time.
Yep. Great advice. Thanks for sharing. Okay. All right. Well, good. Okay. So let's go towards, so we were talking about the one-on-one email communication. Now we're going to kind of move into the email marketing. This is, you know, the email newsletters and the bulk emails that we're sending out. And again, as I'm going through this, if I say something that sort of triggers an idea, comment, question, just raise your hand and jump in, or use the Q&A and type it in. So the first thing is, if you've got a small business, if you've got a small list, and when I say small list, let's say that your list is 100 or less prospects, you don't necessarily have to jump into the pool of email marketing platforms. You can, in general, use your Outlook and Gmail. But I think for most of us, you'll find that if you bring over your email contacts into an email platform, it'll provide you with some efficiencies and some data that will be invaluable to help you better define who your customers, who your audience is, and more effectively communicate with them. And so, again, you know, the leaders in this space are Constant Contact and MailChimp, but there are literally dozens of other providers that are out there, and there's no right or wrong one to choose. A lot of it is just preferences. And just like BombBomb, you can, in general, whoops, sorry, I'm trying to do something here. In general, you can do a trial. And I mean, what's exciting, you know, is a lot of these email platforms, up to a certain amount of contacts, it's free. So over the last week, I've been helping these two women that wrote a book, and they had under 2,000 contacts. We set them up with MailChimp absolutely free, and they're able to use all the services that that platform offers. So the first thing would be, let's just assume whether you have 100 or 10,000 names in your system, you're going to pick a platform. The second thing that's very important is the more you can segment your list, the better. So let's just say broad base that you've got 3 types of people on your list. You've got your current customers, you've got your current prospects, and you've got your referral sources. The benefit to having these guys separated into 3 different buckets is that you can specifically send them individual messaging that they're going to respond better to, because I'm specifically talking to a referral source, as opposed to this sort of blanket newsletter that kind of goes out to referral sources, customers, and prospects, all with the same messaging. So that's the value of segmenting a list, and it will enable you to be more focused in your communication. Now, the goal is that when we're out there doing our marketing, obviously we want people to pick up the phone and move into our community or hire our home care agency or join our village. That is the call to action, but chances are it's going to take some time. And so what our sort of first level when we're in lead generation is, the goal is just to get somebody to trust me enough to add their email to my communication list. And so part of this is, again, it's understanding who your audience is. What do they want? What are the problems and solutions that they have, so that you can address it with a variety of incentives that might get them to add themselves to your communication list. And in general, we call the incentives are referred to in the marketing industry as lead magnets. So examples are books and white papers, webinars, perhaps a toolkit, your home care agency. Here's your choosing a home care agency toolkit. It could be, joining our Facebook or an online community, or it could be a course or a challenge or something like that. So these are just some ideas of lead magnets that can get people in a very non-threatening way to join your list, and now you can begin communicating with them depending on where they are in that marketing funnel. These lead magnets, you want to have prominent placement on your website and social media to sort of drive that response. A lot of times it makes sense to have a specific landing page, so that if you're offering somebody a white paper or a toolkit, is that they click on it and it provides them with a glimpse of what you're offering in more details, as opposed to just sort of, click here and type in your email address and I'll send you something. And then lastly, in terms of building and growing your list, it's when somebody is added to your list, a new person is added to your list, you want to, I know we can't hug people in for real these days, but you want to give them that big virtual hug, make them feel welcome. And you also, it's not a bad idea to, at that point, ask them what their preferences are in terms of how they like to be communicated, how often they like to be communicated, and we can segment our list accordingly so that we don't turn this person off who actually showed that they are interested in our organization. Okay, let's see. Jennifer Brown has a question here before I move to the next slide. Comment, be careful with randomly adding email addresses to MailChimp and other email databases. Your target audience must give you permission for you to add to the database. If you question this, check out the MailChimp terms and conditions. Absolutely. And Jennifer, I'm glad that you brought that up. And that does lead into some of the next slide, which is talking about metrics. Okay, so for example, if you've gathered a bunch of emails, if these are people that are your connections, and let's say you're starting out fresh, you just got all these emails in your inbox, and you want to move them over to MailChimp. When you import them in, you're gonna have to click a bunch of buttons that says, I have permission to add this person to my email list. One approach that works really well might be to add them into that email list, and your first email can go out, or even before you send out that email, you can say, hey, I am adding you into our email platform. I appreciate your interest in my organization, this, that, and the other. Before I add you in, I want to make sure that that's okay. And I'd like to get your preferences on how frequently you would like to be communicated by me, and what are the topics that you're of interest in. As you can see, if we look back at that last slide, what this is doing is it's automatically segmenting your list so that when you do that first input, you might have people in the right buckets, and the chance of you having unsubscribes and spam reports are minimized. So what Jennifer was talking about is that in MailChimp or in the other email platforms, if you send out emails and you get your unsubscribe rate goes over certain benchmarks, or if your spam report goes over certain benchmarks, the provider will flag you. And so everything I'm going to be talking about today is to minimize that from happening, because truthfully, when we send out emails, we want people to open them and read them. And we want that targeted group out there. So these are some of the KPIs, key performance indicators, that you will be measuring when you're doing your email marketing. So you've got your open rate, which is probably the most important. And in the healthcare sector, about 20% is sort of the average, is that we should expect to get an open rate of around 20% for an effective list. Now, just because you send out an email and you get an 8% open rate, or you get a 35% open rate, it doesn't necessarily mean that's good or bad. What we're going to talk about is there's a lot of things that can factor that. It can be your list, it could be your subject line, it could be what you're sending the email out is not appealing to your broad list that you sent that to. And these are things that you want to monitor and you want to adjust. Your click-through rate is, are people opening, they're reading your email, but are they clicking on anything? Well, if you have nothing for them to click on in your email, then there's no way that you can even have a click-through rate. But if you do have items that they can click through, that's what the click-through rate will measure. And as you can see, a click-through rate of 2% is pretty is average. So the most important thing is that people are reading your email, but adding those calls to actions that they click on is something that you'll monitor as well. And then the unsubscribe rate, again, is an area where you could get flagged by your provider. And this is something that you want to monitor. And if you're just starting building a list right now, you may go through a period with your first couple of rounds of emails where you kind of flush out and you get a lot of unsubscribes. Don't get frustrated on that. Another thing that I like to mention for our industry that's very important is, for a lot of the services that we have, people don't like aging. They don't like aging topics. We are out there to solve problems for them in the short term, and then they move on. So let's say that you're in a nursing home and you have your prospects and families that are added to your list, and you communicate with them on what's going on in your community. And now their mom is no longer at that nursing home. She either moved or passed away or what have you. The chances of that person wanting to stay on your email list are minimized, and so depending on our business, depending on where people are in that sales funnel, you may lose people to unsubscribe just because they're no longer interested and engaged in that topic. And this speaks to the value of having multiple lists. So if you're that nursing home and you've got your segment that is your families, you know that when the Smiths, are no longer a part of the nursing home family, they may not want to continue to subscribe. In fact, as a courtesy, you may go through and pull them off and maybe move them to a different list that is previous families or previous customers. So yes, and Daniel Sanders is made a comment. Correct, build your list legitimately. Everything that I'm talking about now is related to, if people are interested in your organization, they are legitimately on your list, okay? But make sure that you're not offending them. Make sure that you had their permission, and make sure you're communicating with them in a correct way, and you should have a good online relationship. And Jennifer Brown has a comment. If the highest email open rate is Tuesday, how can the average open rate be 19%? Okay, so these are two different statistics that I have on the screen here, Jennifer. So let me talk about this. So I put down at the bottom, the highest email open rates are on Tuesday. That is meaning that that's a different stat, meaning that out of all the days of the week, that if you looked at each of the days, and I can send you this report, so it might say 16% on Monday, 18% on Tuesday, 13% on Wednesday. They're not related. In other words, it doesn't mean that 18% of people are going to open your email. It means that on Tuesday, there's an 18% chance that your email is going to be opened. So whereas the open rate of your individual email we're striving for 20%. So there's 7 days in the week, and there's 18% is the probability that somebody is going to open on Tuesday when compared to the other days of the week. I hope that clarifies it. One of the things that you'll notice, and this is another thing, is that like this morning when I turned on my computer, I had a barrage of press releases, okay? Because everybody's read the same report that says the best day to send out emails is on Tuesday at 7 o'clock. And so all the press release services tend to send out 7 o'clock on Tuesday. The percentage difference between a Tuesday and a Thursday email is only a couple of percents. I think what's more important is that we're going to get into here is it's the relevancy of your email. Is it relevant to the people that you're sending it to? So now let's jump into, hopefully some of those KPIs made sense. And the beauty is when you're using any of these email platforms, generally on your dashboard, you can see these at a glance. Like within 5 minutes of sending out an email, you're going to see what your send rate is and your bounce rate is. And then within the next 2 hours, you're going to probably begin to see your open and your click rate. So it's immediate response, which is really nice. Okay, so subject lines. So we got our list, we got our platform. Now we're sending out an email. And the first thing that your users is going to see is going to be their subject line. The subject line is oftentimes what is going to force them to click on that email. It's not exclusive, because a lot of times it could be that they're clicking on it because I saw Jennifer's name up there. Jennifer Brown sent me an email through her platform. I trust Jennifer Brown and Seabury. I read everything that they send me, regardless of what the subject line says. I might open it because of who's sending it to me, but oftentimes it's what's in the subject. So the building an effective vocabulary and insight on what your audience, what subject lines your audience prefers is essential. So just a couple of points. Getting personal. Okay, most email platforms enable you to drop personal info into the subject line. So again, I'm picking on Jennifer Brown. I could create a subject line that says, Jennifer Brown, here is your home care toolkit. And that may or may not, but in general, it's been proven that if you add some of that personalization, you do get a higher open rate, okay? And the systems can usually do this very, very easily. The segmenting of your audience. So instead of just sending one email to your entire list, which sometimes you're going to do that, but you want to make sure that the content in the subject is relevant. But you can segment your audience. So for example, let's say you send out a newsletter. One thing that you might think about is, hey, I'm going to have one subject line for my customers, and I'm going to have another subject line for my referral sources. And I might change some of the content too. That's another important thing, is you want to make sure that your subject line relates to the content. You don't want to overpromise or underdeliver what you put in the subject line needs to follow with the content. The avoid spam triggers and emojis. There's some thought on this. You can put one or two emojis if you like that, but oftentimes they may get dumped into somebody's spam folder, and they're going to miss your message. When we talk about spam triggers, if you go to Google and you just search spam email triggers, there's a bunch of there's a list of these, and that you can download. And so, for example, like one spam trigger would be using multiple exclamation marks in your subject line. It could be I tried to cut and paste the list of the spam triggers. And what I'll do is in my follow-up email, I'll send you some links to articles that list them. But in essence, what they are is they're words that emails filter systems, whether it be your company or something like Gmail, specifically picks up on these specific words, and they automatically move those emails into the spam folder. So I'll share those with you. Using numbers is not a bad thing. So, and when I say using numbers, is that it might be reflecting on 7 reasons why there's 7 tips to selecting a home care agency. The important thing is that you need to have those 7 tips in the content of your email. Communicating urgency is a great thing to do in your subject line, and it will trigger open rate. Great example that I've discovered here in the last month in doing all these webinars is that I could say, hey guys, we're having a discussion next week on, aging in place. But when it gets down to the day before or the morning of, and I have more urgency, last chance to sign up for, the open rate goes, it usually doubles. And the click rate usually doubles when I use that urgency. And using questions is another thing to do in your subject line. So are you confused about choosing, or about which home care agency to choose? Something like that. So now, one of the great features of all these email platforms is that they enable you to do A/B testing, so that you can, over time, you can begin to move towards communicating to your audience in your subject line the way that they prefer to be communicated to. And so so what A/B testing is that you come up with 2 different subject lines, and you send out your email, and it'll send it out to a random small percentage of your audience, let's say 10%. And based on the open rate of that 10%, then it will send it out to the rest of the list using the subject line that won that A/B test. And then the next email that you send out, you can get even more detailed and play around with that until you get to the point where you see over time your email open rate has been rising based on utilizing this A/B testing on the subject line. So a couple of things to think about with using A/B testing is it's good to always be focused and start with like a hypothesis. So I cut and pasted this one here. We believe personalizing the subject line of the subscriber's first name will help make our campaign stand out in the inbox and increase the chance that it'll get open. So a way that you would A/B test that is, it would be, Steve, here is your home care checklist, and then another subject line that just says, here is your home care checklist. And you would see, okay, the personalization did work. So now you might say, should we put the name of the recipient at the beginning of the subject line or the end? So then you figure out which one's preferred there, and you can see how you will progress. So you have the hypothesis. You want to make sure that you don't try to do too many things at once when you're A/B testing. Just pick one thing and kind of focus on that, and then pick another thing and focus on that. And like I just explained, just build on the results. So I'm going to go to our next slide, but before I do, I got a couple of questions. Judy Tiger says, specifically, what is a spam trigger? Again, I'm going to send you a list of those trigger words. I should have had them up on my screen so I could read some to you, but it's anything that kind of gets, it increases the chance that people see that this is a legitimate email. Let's see, Ken Silverstein, is it recommended to use an actual individual's name in the subject line? It's been shown that will improve your open rate. However, each of our audiences are different. So that's where the A/B testing comes in to prove that hypothesis with your list. But in general, if you can get personalized, it will improve your open rate, I think, for most of us. Beware of over-personalization. A great comment, Judy. Beware of over-personalizing, i.e. dropping someone's name into the subject line or the first line of the immediate greeting. I immediately anything of this sort because it smacks of slick marketing. Okay, glad you brought that up, Judy. My recommendation on personalization is don't do it on all of your emails. Do it when it's appropriate. Because yes, a segment of your audience is like, gosh, every email this guy sends to me, it has, my name in the subject line. Whereas if it's maybe, once a quarter, it's sort of like, Judy, we're just an email just to check in with you, Jennifer Brown has 2 resources, and Jennifer, let's see if I can cut and paste these into chat. I did. I just cut and pasted them into chat. Jennifer had 2 resources, and there's tons of these out there. Email subject line grader and subject line. These are great things to give you ideas on what are effective subject lines. But it's very important that we all recognize we all have a different audience that we're communicating with. So just because subject line grader says that this is going to be a winning subject line doesn't necessarily mean that on the email that I'm sending to my unique audience that it's going to be as effective. All right. And that's where studying the metrics of your emails is where you are going to get to the best customized subject line that's out there. Daniel Sanders says best times to send an email blast to get the highest open rates are between 10:15 and 3 p.m. on Tuesday. Thursday's okay. A healthy call of your list. Again, I think Tuesdays and Thursdays are the general rule. But if you've got, if you have a good list, if you have good content, and you have a clear message, and you haven't over emailed or under communicated with your audience, you should be have an effective open rate just about any day of the week that you send it out. Susan Rannick says, I cringe with hi there. Again, it's looking at your greeting, and I'm notorious, I tend to just cut and paste and just add on to the previous emails that I sent, but mixing it up and doing something that shows that even though this is a bulk email, that I'm adding some personalization and that there's some unique content in here that's going to be helpful. Let's see. Okay, let me, oh boy, it's almost 1. So let me kind of rip through this. And okay, so the next thing that's most important is content, and that's what's in your email. So you got your subject line, but really, ultimately, that you're building trust, that when people trust you enough to open your email and they read your content, if there's good information in there, if it's relevant, they're likely to continue reading your emails over time. They might not click everyone, but they may begin to click them more frequently, share it, and sort of move down your marketing channel to somebody who is a trusted customer or a referral source. So a couple of things: make sure that your content relates to and reinforces the subject line. Here's a stat that I pulled on the personalization. In general, a personalization in the email can result in a 14% higher click-through rate. That is not necessarily the greeting that we're talking about. The personalization could be specific to the segment or the list. So, for example, instead of sending an email out to all your referral sources, what if you segmented, the elder law attorneys, and the personalization is focused more around their profession as opposed to them as an individual. So it could be the email goes out and it says, elder law attorneys trust Shady Acres Assisted Living because we do X, Y, and Z. That could be something that might lead your audience to engage more in the email communication. You can, in addition to A/B testing for subject line, you can A/B test for content as well. So you could send out an email and it has a large graphic image as the first thing that you see when you open it, and then you could do one with no graphic images, and you could study the click-through rate and the engagement of those two. But again, going back to what I said before, it's best to have a hypothesis. Like, focus on one thing. Focus first on A/B testing your subject line, and then A/B test your content. Don't try to do both at the same time, because what could happen is you could have your one subject line is selected, and then the content is different. So just keep those hypotheses tight and focus on one thing. And over time, you're going to begin to build your own sort of toolkit on what is the most effective email marketing. Content specific to your list segment. I sort of brought up the elder law attorney one. Here's one that I wanted to make sure address is general versus specific. So most of us, we sort of feel obligated to get an email out to our entire list. So we all do a monthly newsletter. And so what happens is most of us are barraged with dozens and dozens of monthly newsletters from a variety of providers. Now, if I'm a trusted referral source and partner with you, I'm interested in anything you send me. It doesn't care. It doesn't, like I said before, if it comes from Jennifer Brown, I'm going to open it. But if you're on that road to building trust, and you're just adding another, this is your monthly newsletter from Shady Acres, and I've already on monthly newsletters from the 5 other assisted livings that I was looking for my mom, you could see where I might unsubscribe. And so this is where you want to play around with general and specific. And you can do both, okay? So for example, play around with your monthly newsletter, calling it something different. Like, instead of saying it's the main newsletter for Shady Acres, maybe call out the main story that's in that newsletter instead of sort of calling it this general newsletter, okay? And see what kind of response you get. Now, if your list says, geez, Steve, you didn't send out your main newsletter, I was waiting for it. It's like, oh no, I sent it out, it had a different header. This is great market research and engagement. It's sort of like, oh, I'm glad to know that you prefer and that you're looking for the newsletter. I was playing around and experimenting with some of the ways that we send that out to see if we get better engagement. I think in general, if you're sending something not to a trusted source in your pipeline, meaning further down the sales funnel, that getting specific is going to be more effective. So, and again, specific would be, attend this webinar, as opposed to here's our monthly newsletter of what's happening at Shady Acres. Also explore writing in the second person point of view. It's the most underutilized point of view out there, but it builds authenticity. And so if you remember in English class, they would always explain to kids what second person is. It's sort of like a choose your own adventure book where you're saying you are doing this and you have a problem making an elder care decision, and this is a solution that you are choosing. So explore that, because it's been seen as being more effective in email marketing based on some of the research studies that I've gone through. Real life stories are great. Showing real life stories of your customers, your clients, and links to videos can be effective. Having measurable calls to action is also very important, and monitoring those and seeing what works. So again, that could be clicking to get a white paper. It could be clicking to schedule an appointment or an assessment, or to get a free book, something like that. And lastly, just like in your personal email, how you sign off on an email can help that email seem to be more authentic and effective. So for example, this is something for some of you guys to try. On your email newsletter, which oftentimes are sort of formatted just like a newspaper, where you have this masthead and then it says May 2020, and then you have your table of contents and stuff. Experiment with throwing a little personal letter right above the newsletter that is sort of like, hi, Steve, I thought you might like to read our monthly newsletter. If there's anything that I can do to help you, please give me a call, Cindy. And then put the newsletter below that, and see if that works with engagement. Okay. I'm going to try to rip through this. I know we're going over an hour here, but again, okay. And this actually, Daniel Sanders has a comment in here. List fatigue is real. Don't oversend, making sure your content adds value. It's not a megaphone. It's an engagement tool. Couldn't agree more. And that deals with my next slide here, which is frequency. We have to be really careful about frequency. And I said, you know, here's sort of the pros and cons. Send too many emails and you become another spammer who annoys their subscribers, causing them to unsubscribe. However, send too few emails to your email list and your audience will become disengaged. They don't know who you are and they're not going to connect with you. And we're all in this balance. I take this one very seriously, especially in COVID-19. I know you guys are getting bombed by emails with me because we're promoting all these webinars. And it makes me really nervous. Last May, last month, I sent out over 35 emails. It's more than one a day, even though they were going to different lists. A year before COVID-19, I only sent out 10. I always sort of made it a rule of thumb that I wanted to only send out emails about every, 9 or 10 days and kind of balance them out so that, people aren't getting barraged by me by these emails. But the interesting thing is that in COVID-19, when there's a sense of urgency, my click rates go through the roof. So it's sort of like communicating a day or two before there's an important webinar creates more engagement than me sending out, hey, here's a list of the next month activities or some news articles you might be interested in. So what we're all trying to do, and this is a moving target, especially with COVID-19, is it's referred to as your email cadence. It's what is the frequency that your customers want and where you're getting the best engagement and where you're not losing people. And especially when they unsubscribe, they can tell you, I get too many emails from you. That's why I'm unsubscribing. The best thing is to have multiple lists and relate those to the spots on the marketing funnel, as well as setting up an email preference center is that when people subscribe, you can basically say, what is your frequency that you would like to hear from me? And if they're monthly, you can kind of put them over on the monthly tag and just hit them with an email once a month to check in. And the best way to figure this out, the best frequency, is to be surveying your customers and your referral sources, informally or formally. Email list engagement and CRM integration. So this is, or management, sorry, management. Okay, so how we manage our lists can be a very complicated process. But one thing that's very important that I see in a lot of organizations is that there's one person in the organization that knows that we're collecting emails, and that is usually the marketing person. And if you're in a larger organization, there's people all throughout your organization that have contacts and that have relationships with customers, clients, and referral sources. And I look at marketing, it's best implemented when it's an all hands on deck approach. So making sure the executive director knows that you can add your contacts to our email communication list. And we can set up some rules. So you could segment the list that this is the executive director's contacts, and these contacts will only receive, our monthly communication to professional referral sources. All right. So that what we don't want to do is we don't want to sacrifice the relationship the executive director has with their contacts, but we want to leverage the fact that the executive director is super busy and they're not necessarily engaged in marketing like the marketing person is, but we want to get the word out. And we hear this time and time again where trusted contacts of somebody in the organization are like, oh, I didn't know you were hosting this event or webinar. How do I get on that list? And we want to make sure everybody in your organization knows the value of the email communication and make it easy for them to add people to the list. And one of the ways to do this is to have a single point of entry where they could either just go in and manually add them and they understand that which list they should add them to, or they go through one person in the organization where it's sort of like, here, Cindy, I just met this doctor and I want to make sure he's in our email communication for doctors, and I see the schedule of when you send something out to doctors, so this is great. Okay. All right. Now, the last thing on managing our list is having periodic deliverability audits. Okay. So it's scary. From year to year, you will lose 20% of your list and you didn't do anything wrong. It's people changing jobs. People, their mom was in the nursing home. They're no longer in the nursing home. They don't want her stuff. So just think about 20% of your list is going to go away and you did nothing at all. I'm seeing like a lot of people being dropped off some of my lists because in COVID-19, they're losing their jobs. So their work email is no longer relevant. And so the periodic deliverability audit that means like on a monthly or a quarterly basis, you look at your open rates and you can segment your list using any of the tools that we're talking about to basically say, okay, these people have not opened any of my emails in the last 6 months. So we have a few choices there. You could just drop them, unsubscribe them, just assume they don't want your information. But what a better choice is to sort of say, I'm going to send an email to this group. I'm going to segment them. I'm going to put them in a list. I'm going to send a nice quick note that says, hey, look, we noticed that you haven't opened our emails in a period of time. Don't give them the specifics because it'll give them that big brother feel. It's like, we wanted to give you the option to continue to be on our list or to unsubscribe. And you can give them the click link where they unsubscribe, or you can have them email back and then you take them off the list. And then a good rule of practice is send that out. and then maybe wait a few months and then pull it up again. And then at that point in time, the people that haven't opened your email in an 8-month period, then you could drop them off. But when you drop them off, one idea is pull them into a spreadsheet so you've got them on the side, and throughout your daily work, you'll see if any of them kind of pop into your life again. But this will improve your click rate, your open rate, and the effectiveness of your emails. Okay, got through that. I know I went over an hour. I hope you guys found this to be helpful. Just to remind you, every Tuesday we're going to have these. If anybody has questions or comments, raise your hand. I'm delighted to call on you. But just to kind of let you know, especially if this is your first time, every Tuesday we've got these sessions. Next week, I'm really excited about the topic. It's how do we deal with I'm not ready yet, and how do we deal with the ageist aspect of our business. People don't want to buy a lot of our services because it's aging related. And how can we combat that? And how can we help people that are saying, I'm not ready yet? How can we help them make a decision quicker? Or how can we verify that they truly are not ready yet and that they're not just responding to that because our service is too expensive or it's they feel uncomfortable, making a decision in the elder care space. So we'll be talking about that next week. The Marketing Masterminds free community, you can schedule a 30 to 45 minute call with me anytime you like. I've got a calendar link on that I'll send out to you guys. And I've been having some awesome discussions since we started these marketing mastermind sessions. And then lastly, we've got a variety of things that we offer to you at Sourcebook. We're putting the print book on hold for a little bit to kind of see where things happen, but we're really diving into the programmatic and the geofencing and digital marketing and the webinars and things of that nature. So guys, thanks a lot. And since nobody's raising their hand, I'm going to end the meeting and I will talk to you guys soon. Thank you.